Productions, the Cultural Preservation Station. Tune in. Tune in. Hey yo. Black education, cultural preservation, Taylor BTV, because elevation. Tune into the station, we rockin' the whole nation. That's right, we rockin' the whole nation, prepping new generation for mental activation. Taylor BTV's the new sensation. Stop the hesitation and learn something new. My girl Taylor B's here to show and prove.
All right. Peace, love, justice, and accountability, family. I am Teller B. This is BTV, Black Education Empowers True Vision. And I want to welcome you to the very first Justice on Earth Weekly. This is our first recorded weekly breakdown. The purpose is very simple. We are here to keep the record. We're here to ask necessary questions. We're here to document, and we're here to implement the 7D Cultural Ascension Principles as it pertains to the news and the current events that are going on right now. So this is the way that we're going to be doing this. And really, ultimately, this is to protect Black life. And this is to spread Black love and to spread joy and to let everyone know in the family that we are here for each other and we love each other. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Teller B. If you don't know me, that's not just a name, so I'll go into that a little bit. So my name means truth aligned, yields love, order, and respect. Black education empowers true vision. Okay, that's Teller BTV. So if you didn't know, now you know. That's what we're here for. I know we haven't really been doing a lot of Justice on Earth shows, but this is our way to get back to talking to you weekly, letting you know all the things that are going on, and really just giving you a chance to weigh into those things, right? So this is where we set the bar for the community, right? And we're going to set the bar by kings and queens up, kings and queens rule. So in today's episode, we're going to be looking at a couple of stories that are going on and to really just set the record straight and really let everybody know what's been going on. So we're going to start out with the Nolan Wells story. This is the lead story because, of course, the public record is still developing around this story, but the community has already weighed in. And as a community, we know what we know. We know our experiences. We know what we've been through. We know how we're treated when we're around others in a dominant society. So we already have cracked the case, right? Black Americans have already cracked this case. We already know what happened to Nolan. We don't know exactly what happened, but we know the gist of what happened, right? So what we know right now is that Nolan went to Cohen Island with so-called friends on July 4th, and he didn't return home, but all of the friends returned home, and they also had his cell phone. So a body that is believed to be Nolan's was found on July 6th. And let me get these slides up here. I want to add the slides to the stage. All right, because we're gonna really look at this and see what we can find out. So Nolan is the lead story this week because the public record is still developing, but as a community, we know what happened, right? There's a huge community response from the Black American community, and we know our experiences. We know how we're treated. We know how it feels to be the only one when we're in the room filled with others from the dominant society. So a lot of us have already seen the writing on the wall with this story, but of course, all of the facts and all of that kind of stuff are still unfolding. So we're going to start from the beginning. What we do know is that Nolan went to Cohen Island with his friends on July 4th, and he did not return home. A body was found on July 6th, and it's believed to be Nolan's. I do believe his mother identified that as his body. So what we don't know yet is just as important as what we do know, and just as important as what our hunches are, right? So the full timeline is still developing. The official cause and the manner of death is still unknown. So we don't really have all of those facts yet. So we're going to set the bar here and we're going to make sure that we ask questions and that we get factual answers. This is not about just spreading rumors about what's going on, even though, again, like I said, a lot of us know the history and we know our experiences when we're dealing with a dominant society. So to us, it's not a big surprise that this has happened to Nolan. I mean, may he rest in peace, and may justice be had in his case, right? Now, let's take a look a little bit at the timeline. So the timeline is the spine of this story, and we're going to look at this real quick. So on July 4th, Nolan went to Horn Island with a group of his friends. He was last reported seen around 3 p.m. that day. So later on July 4th, his mother had contacted the authorities when he didn't come home, right? So all the friends went home, everybody's back, Nolan's missing, right? So that was late on July 4th. On July 5th, the search was by July 5th, the search was expanded and the search was on for Nolan's body, with multiple agencies involved with the search to try to find this young man. On July 6th, they did find a body that matched Nolan's description that was found near the northwest end of Cohen Island. Okay, and this timeline we have to really make sure that we keep a hold of this timeline and that it stays clear, because this is going to help us erase any confusion. And it's really going to help us to really discern about who's really accountable for what happened to Nolan and really what happened to Nolan. All right, so what we know versus what we still need to know. Okay, so we know that Nolan was 18 years old. He was a football player. He went to Horn Island with his so-called friends. He did not return. A body matching his description was recovered, and his family publicly confirmed their loss. And I believe at this point, his mother also confirmed that the body was his. What we don't know is we don't have the cause and manner of death. We don't have the full timeline of what took place that day and what took place on the boat. We don't have witness statements. So we don't have like details from the phones, text messages, and all that kind of stuff, video or photo evidence or surveillance. There are a couple videos floating around online that are not from the boy's phone. They're from another phone, someone that was just there. So I'm sure the police are trying to confiscate all those things so they can really figure out what happened to this young man. So the community, of course, we want to know what happened to Nolan. Like all of us want to know what happened to Nolan. So people are asking questions, and these questions matter. These are the things that they need to answer for. And one other thing before I get into this, what I want to point out is that the group of friends that Nolan went on this trip with, all of their parents are either judges, lawyers, or doctors. So all of these people, all the boys have already lawyered up. They've scrubbed their social media accounts, and so did their parents. So, I mean, guilt makes them tilt every time. But of course, I am not the judge, jury, or prosecutor in this case. But now we're going to need to look at the discussion and the discernment phase and ask these important questions. Why did Nolan not return with the group? I want to know why, why was Nolan with the group? I don't want to say it like that, but why was you out there with these group of people? Did you trust these people? I just don't know. I don't want to speculate. Why did the whole group return, but Nolan didn't return with the group? Who was the last verified person to see Nolan alive? Why was Nolan separated from his phone? What did his friends report? Because from what I'm hearing, the friends haven't answered any questions. All the friends are saying is they don't know what happened, and they're acting very ignorant to the situation, like they just don't know what happened, and no one's even pressing them to question them. I mean, to me, they should all be held, they should all be detained and questioned. Their phones should have been confiscated. They shouldn't even have their phones, right? Do the timelines match, right? And what did the search establish? So discernment in the 7D principles means asking the hard questions and reading between the lines, not just looking at what's manufactured to give to us, but looking at those things, but reading between those lines, right? So we can demand answers without spreading claims and rumors that we don't have. But until we have the answers, people are going to speculate. Okay. And again, like I said, we've experienced this one too many times in our community. So the people are on this, and we're not going to let this go. All right. So before this becomes a big debate online about race, about any of that kind of stuff. We need to make sure that we are humanizing this young man. And right now, I'm not really talking to our community. I'm talking to the dominant society. You know, how would you feel if this was one of your children, right? If one of your children was on a boat filled with Black friends and the white child that come back, this would be a whole nother scenario that we're looking at. We need to make sure that we keep in mind that Nolan was someone's son. He's maybe someone's brother. He's a student, he's an athlete, he's a friend, he's a teammate, and he was a young man that had a future that was taken from him by a group of people that potentially will be able to get away with this. Okay. So this is why we talk about justice on earth. This is what it means to have justice on earth, not reducing Black life to a headline, to a rumor, or to a hashtag. This is what it means to have justice on earth. It means to look at these things from an objective standpoint and get the answers, to have discussions, use our discernment to read between the lines so we can develop our own idea about what happened, right? That way you can develop your own consensus about what happened. Now, let's look at the 7D Cultural Ascension Principles. Okay, we're going to look at this in relationship to Nolan. So for the dormant phase, of course, we know that's the phase where you're not doing much of anything. It's an active phase. But right now, we're way out of the dormant phase. This is not going to be silenced. We're not going to allow the story to be buried. We're not going to allow people to dehumanize Nolan. We are going to stay on top of this as a community, the same way that we've been staying on top of everything else as a community as of late. This is what we have to do. This is what we need to do. Now, we need to dedicate, and we definitely need to delineate. Okay. We name the case, and we are separating the facts from rumors and the facts from claims. We have given you a timeline of what we actually know that's factual right now. But this right here, folks, is one of the main reasons why we need to delineate, because as a community, these are the things that we face as a Black American community in this nation. So this is the things, like when we do delineate, these are the things that we need to take under consideration. These are the things that we need to, look at ways that we want to create our own policy around when something like this happens with one of our people. Okay. And we can only do that if we delineate. We can only do that by delineating. Okay. You can't do that when you're listening to all of these other people. You're enthralled in everyone else's community and everyone else's society. We need to have discussions, bringing this case into the community spaces with care, of course, bringing it to the forefront, not letting it go, continuing to have discussions, continuing to ask the questions, and continuing to hold law enforcement accountable, to hold the would-be perpetrators need to be held accountable. And as long as we continue to discuss this and keep it in the forefront, there is going to have to be a level of accountability that gets held here. All right, discernment. We have to ask the deep questions. We have to look and read between the lines. Of course, as a community, we're already doing that. We're already looking at this and we're already saying, hell, we know what the hell happened. Them boys killed him. They killed him. They took him out. They threw him in a river or whatever they did to him. Maybe he couldn't swim, and they did this to him. They kept his phone. If this really happened to him, it was an accident, someone would have called 911 right away to try to get the Coast Guard out there to save him. But no one did that. These kids went right back to partying on the beach. Okay. So that's a huge problem. And that's why discernment is important. Documentation. We got to preserve these timelines. We got to preserve all the statements that are coming out, screenshots, video evidence, photo evidence, official updates, continuing to keep our foot on their neck. Anybody in our community that's worth anything, that has clout and power and pull, you need to be on the forefront. You need to be making a video. You need to be saying something. You need to be contacting that law enforcement agency to make sure that we're keeping our foots on their necks about our young brother Nolan, whose life was prematurely taken from him. Okay, and rest in peace to you, young man. And really, my condolences go out to his mother, his whole family, his friends, and not those so-called friends, because those are the people who did this to him, and those are not his friends. And young people, y'all really need to be careful about who you call your friend. Everybody that smiles in your face is not your friend. So, we have to use our discernment. That's what this is all about. Okay, developing. We need to develop and build safety protocols and response systems, family. Like, honestly, we need to start building protocols. We need to start building protocols and response systems as a community when this type of thing happens. This is what the 7D Cultural Ascension Principles can do for us. It can put us in line and give us the things that we need to address the issues that are taking place in our community. Okay, so we really need to preserve all the timelines. We need to keep the record, right? This is what this whole show is about, keeping the record. So all the statements, like, again, all of the footage, everyone that was on the beach that day should have been subpoenaed. All of their phones should have been taken from them, so it can be gone through for any type of evidence that can help them build a case and help us find out what happened to this young brother. Okay, deployment. We need to move with coordinated pressure, family, and not move upon scattered emotions, right? I know this is emotional for us. I know we have gone through this several times and we're tired. Trust me, I'm tired too. I'm tired too, but we have to be logical. We have to move with coordination, with intelligence. You cannot be too emotional, because when our emotions come in, we make mistakes, we forget things, we lose our place in what we're trying to do. And it can really open the door to allow people to come in and throw us off of what our plan is. Okay. This is how we turn grief into disciplined action. All right. This is how we can do it. So we definitely, it's definitely time for us to really take a serious look at this, and really make sure we're looking at this from the bigger picture. Okay. And then when we look at this, the bigger picture is that the story raises a larger issue. Okay. What about our safety in social spaces? Okay. This is why we need delineation. We need to develop our own protocols and our own doctrines and safety responses. Okay. Have someone that you can speed dial if you feel like you're in danger. This is not about fear or causing fear. This is about awareness, and it's about preparedness. Okay. It ain't fear. We need to be aware and we need to be prepared. Okay. And before you allow your young person, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew to travel, you need to vet who your child's with. I'll tell you right now, my child was not allowed to spend a night at nobody's house. Not allowed. She did not spend the night at nobody's house. And I'm going to tell you from my own experience, of having things happen to me when I spent the night at others' house, right? Having that experience helped me to be more aware, and it helped me to be prepared for how I raise my daughter and who I let her be around. Okay. So again, you have young kids, you need to know who your kids are with. Do you know this group? Do you know their families? Do you know the plan? Do you know where they're going to be? Do you know how they're getting there? Do you know how they're getting back? Who's the emergency contact? Do they know all of these things? These are the types of things that we need to make sure that we are empowering our kids with as they go out here in these streets. Okay. And then, like, during the event, nobody should be isolated or left behind or left alone. At the end of the day, I can't tell people how to handle their lives, but we've seen this story one too many times, family. So it's up to us to get on code and get ourselves together to make sure that we are putting our children in the best possible positions when they're going out there in the world and they don't have us right there with them. Okay. Being safe is not about controlling anybody. It's about protecting people, right? It's about protecting people. So I really want us to, take this, this case is serious and it's still developing. So that's the only updates that we have left for that case. But we need to make sure that we are keeping an eye on this case. And now we're going to talk about some of the other things that have been happening in the last week or so. So I know everyone has heard about Cohen Wiley. Okay, he is the child that was shot by the police at a Walmart when it was stated that his mother was trying to steal Pampers. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're documenting this and we're keeping a record for young Cohen Wiley. He was 1 year old. Again, this happened in Mississippi Walmart. The Walmart called the police on these women and said that they were stealing Pampers. They did not steal the Pampers. The family commissioned a preliminary autopsy report that raised serious questions about the official account and about the account that the police gave. Of course it did, right? We know they're lying. right? That's no surprise to us that they're lying about this, but we need to make our demands clear. So really what we should be demanding right now is a release of the body cam, a release of that dash cam, and a release of the Walmart footage from inside the store and the parking lot, because the day that our children's lives are like collateral damage for what someone thought is over. Like, this is what we need to start really focusing on as a community, and less focusing on bullshit that don't matter, like all of this crap going on with the, talking about NDRE and Young Miami, even though, there's some things that could be said about that music that's a detriment to us. But right now, that's not really the most important thing. We have more pressing issues to talk about. But again, there's a lane for everybody. So if that's what you're interested in, that's what you're interested in. The other thing I want to bring up is over the weekend, there was a shooting at a Coney Island barbecue where 8 people, including 4 children, were shot. Okay. So I want to talk about this. This is not about shaming the community or anything like that. This is about protecting our children, protecting our elders, and protecting our gatherings, right? It's funny that they said that there were no type of confrontations before this happened. The whole day, there were no confrontations. This just came out of nowhere. And I'm going to make a bold statement right now. I'm going to say, with the climate that's going on in this country, we have to use our discernment and take into account this could have been someone from the dominant society that came through and did this, right? You have to take this into account. We have to understand how we work as a people. Now, I could see if there were several arguments that day, or if there were people from a gang or something like that, I could see that, right? But if the whole day was peace, everything was chill, this was like a family event, it was a family gathering, and it just gets shot up like that, no, that don't sound right to me. That sounds like somebody from the dominant society was paid off to come do this. And I'm telling you right now, just like the first story, some of these people are paid to do this. Some of these people, it may not be being paid monetarily, but it's paying forward some way, right? Like they're getting some type of initiation or whatever. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole of what they could be getting for doing this to people in our community, but they already have a hatred for us that is not even of this world. So I would not put it past that it could be someone from the dominant society that actually did this drive-by shooting. We have to keep our community safe, and we really have to address, violence at the state level, because we've been targeted, right? We've been targeted at the state level violently, whether that's through via police or through the dominant society. Okay. And that's not to say that we don't have our own quarrels, but right now we're not talking about our own quarrels that we have with people that are in proximity to us. Okay. Because every society has that. Every society has quarrels and gets in fights and murders people or unalives people that's in proximity, that lives close to them. That's not what this is about, right? This is about, as a community, coming together to make sure that we are protecting one another and protecting when we have elders and children in the area. All right. So let's move into a little bit talking about this civil rights and this voting power stuff that they got going on. So the voting power is, up for debate in the Congress, and the voting protections were weakened. They were weakened. And everything becomes harder when that gets weakened. Now, one thing I will say is you saw how we introed the episode, no reparations, no tangibles, no vote. So they can go ahead and do all this stuff that they want with this voting protection thing. We ain't voting anyway. Okay. So you doing all this, you're not hurting us. You've never historically done anything for us through any type of vote in the past. So why would we think it would be different now? You guys, the dominant society is already doing what they want to do. But again, weakening voting protection, it does weaken our case for things, right? Because it redraws lines. It's basically a political redlining. It's politically redlining you out of districts and out of certain areas so they can elect who they want to elect in these seats via the local government, via the House, via the Senate, and then they go ahead and get to make the policies that they want to make. So the way that we're going to get our justice is not going to be through voting, family. So I don't want us our people to be worried about this voting right thing. I don't want you to worry about it. That's historically not how we have gotten our justice, how we have gotten civil rights in the past. We have to just continue our fight. We have to continue on the grassroots level, the things we're doing, and we're going to get what's coming for us and what we're owed. I do wholeheartedly believe in that. Now, let's talk about America and its fake 250 years of freedom that they're going on about this week. They're talking about 250 years of freedom, but Black Americans have receipts that we're still not free. You know, even up to all the stories that we've talked about in this show alone show that Black Americans do not experience the same America that the dominant society experiences. From, you know, you can start with the legacy of slavery all the way up through segregation, through policy harm, through state sanctioned violence, through stolen land, through stolen labor. You know, reparations are not a symbolic thing. Reparations are about repair. That's the root word of reparations, repair. Okay. And recognizing that repair is necessary. All right. But recognition without resources is not repair. Okay. Recognition without tangible resources is not repair. So repair must be funded. It got to be measured, and it has to be tied to the harm that our lineage endured on this nation. So those are the things that we have to continue to keep in the forefront when we're talking about fighting for justice on earth, and when we're talking about fighting for the things that we want and need. All right, now, let me see. Now let's do a little spotlight on Black-owned businesses. We're going to move into the economics a little bit right now. So this week's spotlight is a Black American-owned and community-rooted business. It's called Harriet's Bookshop in Philadelphia, and it centers around Black women authors, artists, activists, and cultural spaces. So, you know, you should be reading anyway, right? So get over there to Harriet's Bookshop in Philly and make sure you're supporting that queen and supporting the sister there. So what do we do next? Here's our action list for the week, family. We need to say Nolan Wells' name. We need to keep his name in our mouth. We don't want to spread rumors, of course, but we want to keep his name in our mouth, and we want to make sure that we are holding these families accountable and holding law enforcement accountable. We need to be tracking the autopsy findings and any type of official updates that are coming out of this case. They should be doing an autopsy so they can figure out what the cause and manner of his death is. So we need to look out for that and look out for any statements coming out of the sheriff's office. We need to preserve all screenshots, timestamps, and public statements that are kind of coming out around this case. And we also need to keep Cohen Wiley in our record and keep Cohen Wiley's name in our mouth and demand the footage behind what happened here. Because again, that autopsy already shows some disparaging and some different information than what the police are saying. Okay, you want to support at least one Black-owned business this week. We are still on the boycotting of Asian businesses. So you want to make sure you're keeping that boycott alive, okay? We're still in that boycott. I know that there's been a lot going on and a lot of back and forth with some Asians online. I don't want you to feel like you're gaslit by these people. You know, let them come on and keep talking. The more these people come on and keep talking about us and keep saying this about us and saying that about us, is more motivation for us to stay the hell up out of their stores. It's more motivation for us to continue this wealth transfer and continuing to transfer this wealth back into the Black community. Okay, so we want to make sure that we're doing all these things. And you know, I'm going to go ahead and put this up. Here it goes, a slide of all of the sources that you can check out about everything that we went through today. I will try to put the sources in the description below, but I'm not going to promise that, okay? I'm not going to promise that I can get those sources in the description below, but I will try to put them in there for you so you can go look them up. But again, these stories are all over the internet. You know, they're all over social media. Everyone's talking about it, especially the Nolan Wells case. And again, that's why I'm saying we need to continue to talk about not just Nolan Wells, but all of our fallen, you know, all of our fallen community members. You know, we need to do better, right? We need to make sure we're keeping their names in our mouths and in our hearts and at the forefront of our minds. Okay. This has been our Justice on Earth weekly brief update for us to make sure that we keep the record, of course, and to make sure that we are continuing along working through the 7D Cultural Ascension Principles when we're approaching anything that's happening in our community. We want to make sure we're not dormant. We want to make sure that we are dedicated to finding out the truth that we have delineated, and that we are working strictly with our community and our nation to nation build and to get things done. We need to make sure that we are having discussions around all of these things that are going on, have discussions with all types of people, with several people. Then you need to be using your discernment so you can read through the line of the things that have been discussed. Okay, that's very important. Then you want to document all this. You need to document this down, whether you're doing it via video online, or if you're documenting it down, writing it down, typing it up, whatever you need to do to document what's going on. We need to document this stuff. And then we need to go ahead, like I said, and develop action plans, develop, safety protocols, strategic ways that we can network. Maybe we need to set up a network in every state where there's a hotline our kids can call or something like that. We have to figure out a way to really develop some policies within our nation that are going to assist us in the goals in the nation building that we're setting out to do. And then after that, deployment is the highest state in the 7D Cultural Ascension Principles. When you're in that deployment phase, you are in a supreme state of 7. And that means that we are deployed. That means that we have set everything up. And that means that we have people that can protect us, and we have people that can protect our community. And we are boots on the ground, on the street, doing what we need to do, whether that's freedom fighting, whether that's the grassroots, having sit-ins, our boycotts. All of these types of things are things that we can do in the deployment phase, right? We're in the deployment phase right now with that boycott, and I'm very proud of everyone for the boycott. Keep up the good work. Keep looking for the Black-owned businesses. There's a few people on here that are putting up some directories of the Black-owned businesses. So just make sure that, that you're being responsible for yourself and that you're doing your part. Because at the end of the day, that's all we can do as an individual, is our part for the greater collective, okay? And then again, once we're doing that, we're coming together to nation build. This is what nation building looks like. So until then, I want to bid everyone, make sure you're staying safe out there. Okay, make sure you're watching your back. Not only watch your back, but watch your fellow Black Americans back when you're out there, because we are at war, people, and the war has been going on for quite some time. It's been a spiritual war. It's been a physical war. It's a biological war. So it's a mental war. So we need to stay ready. Okay, when you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. All right. I want to say peace, love, justice, and accountability. Until next week, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.